Hello, everyone, and welcome to Pod TV's number one financial literacy tip TV show, Wall Street Hackers with Peter Bennett. Peter received his BA at UCLA. He received a law degree at the University of Miami and his MBA at NYU, and then worked about 17 years up there near the Wall Street area and in the Wall Street area. And this is just his skills and expertise. And what I really enjoy about this show is how he's teaching us and sharing with us his expertise and skills so that we can swim through this economic storm that we're in unscathed. Today is August 3rd. 2023. I also want to give out a little disclaimer that this is for informational purposes only. So if you need or require some assistance, please go out and seek the experts. So everyone, help me welcome Peter. Peter,
Hi,
welcome.
Jim. Hello, audience. So it's another exciting week. Things on Wall Street might be getting a little rocky, but I always like to, and by the way, I have to say, we're going to be taking a brief summer hiatus, and we'll be back September 9th, or 7th, depending on which distribution your channel you're watching. Certain ones come out on Thursdays, certain ones Saturdays, but we'll be back in early September and most weeks during the year. So tune in for, I think, most information that you can't get in a lot of other places, not just about finance, but just it's hard to get a lot of information these days on major media topics because everybody's so selective in what they're willing to show you. So before we begin, I always like to start on a positive note because the markets are getting rocky. If we can bring up, Kim, one of our main themes, the S&P 500 versus dividend stocks. So my point, which is pretty clear to me, is if you're going, whatever allocation you want in stocks, you want to have dividend payers and dividend growers as opposed to just any stocks. How do I know that? Well, 50 years of history from 1973 to 2022, it's obvious. If you put $100 in over the 50 years, you received a very decent return of $4,000 in the S&P 500 index anyway, but you would have received over twice that much, 8,000 plus in dividend payers, over 13,000 in dividend growers. So to get 2 or 3 times the return potentially, that's, to me, whatever stocks allocation you want, that's the way to go. So we can close down the chart now, and now we get to the rocky news anyway, to say the least. So inflation's coming, data's coming out, and data came out this week. And again, the market is living in hope. Maybe because the investment community makes more money that way, maybe because they're conditioned to low interest rates over the last 49 years. But things are different now, and the war on inflation may take much, much longer than they think. They're delusional about a soft landing. We're probably having a recession, if not in the next 12 months, the next 18 months. It's a different reality. One thing we look at is cause and not effect, by the way. So the market is looking for any positive return. So they saw some reasonable inflation numbers. Others weren't so good anyway, but they saw some improvement. So it's like, okay, it's all over. Everything's great. Except for look at the causes. Unemployment is at a 50-year low. 3.4% unemployment. 10 million job openings. That's not turning around very quickly. 2, the government keeps stimulating. That's all the government seems to do these days. Spend, spend, spend. But that puts money in the economy, so the Fed has to fight that. Number 3, oil prices. I've been saying all winter, yeah, oil prices are down, but wait till the summer because we had China shut down. We had a warm winter, but that wasn't going to last forever. And now in the last week or two, oil went from 70 to 80. It could go to 90. It could go to 100. In the long run, I think we have a big energy problem. I'll get that in a minute. But here's 2 headlines just that I saw today. 1, U.S., according to ADP, private sector employment jumped by 324,000 in the July payroll report. So this is not what the bulls expected or wanted. They're saying, well, we want less than 200,000 job creation. So when you have 10 million job openings and you're creating 324,000 new jobs, that's not exactly a situation where it's under control. It's good if you're looking for a job, but it's not good if you're fighting inflation. Then I also saw the EIA, the Energy Information Agency, reported the largest U.S. weekly crude draw in the history of the United States. Let me repeat that. The largest weekly crude draw in the history of the United States. So the theory is, oh, demand will go down, oil use will go down, so oil prices will go down, even though there are huge fundamental problems with the oil market. One of the main things, if it doesn't happen this year, it's next year, the year after. I can't predict when, but the fact that oil companies are underinvesting by so dramatically what they used to do. They're under, since 2015, they're putting in less than half of the capital expenditures to develop oil and gas properties. These are long-term projects, 5 to 7 years. Also, USAC, a prior investment, now we have ET, which owns them, and which did very well, by the way. USAC was a great hit. But they said in their conference call, and they would know, they said they believe that the oil and gas industry is underinvesting by 40% just to maintain oil and gas projects where they are production where it is. So I don't know what year it's going to hit, but you start putting in 40% too little capex, you're likely down the road to get roughly 40% too little oil and gas. Even if it's 20%, that would be such a dramatic effect on prices and demand. It's not a pretty picture. And, I can't time it because I'm not a market timer anyway, but these are fundamental issues and I don't see any changes in them at all. So I don't know how high inflation will go, but I do know things are extremely rocky right now in terms of, and the market is starting to reflect it this week. We'll see if it keeps going. But, the market, as delusional it is about to face reality because it's like, oh, by September, we're going to stop cutting. And by the fall, we're going to have a decrease in rates. Well, maybe, but probably not. As I said, and what happens if there's another rate increase or even two really would shock the market and there's no decreases? Well, this will affect the quality of earnings down the road. Quote of the week. It's from a co-manager from a company called Jensen Quality Growth. And I just thought it was a really interesting analysis. We've been talking about how the market is up, but that's mainly driven by 7 tech companies, AI, and that their valuations are extreme right now. Now, they may be worth it. I like tech in the long run, and I would like to make a footnote, which I saw this week too. Very interesting. So since the beginning of COVID, 2020 roughly, if you look at the 2 best sectors, energy and tech, and now we're the 2 best by far. And this week, energy met the positive returns of tech, but that doesn't count the dividends. So if you're in the energy and you're getting dividends, you're beating tech. So in the last 3 years, roughly, over 3 years, you were best off in energy. And I think that's going to continue. Tech, I'm not confident in, although anything can happen. I wasn't tech. So here's the quote. He's from Jensen Quality Growth Fund, and he is explaining why the fund is now staying away from some of the tech companies, in particular, NVIDIA. He said it has a 233 trailing price earnings multiple, and that it fails the fund's growth test. Quote, momentum can also be your enemy when it goes in the other direction. He also pointed out that historically semiconductors have been a cyclical sector subject to the economy's whims, so consistent growth isn't a given. Well, that's it. It might do really great, but there's so much growth built into these companies. Last week, I quoted an analyst manager who said that in 2000, he named all these companies like Lucent and Alcatel, who were part of the dot-com boom, and only Microsoft was still around from then. And they were supposed to be the best investments, and then, of course, it exploded for a while in 2000. So it's rocky time, to say the least. And I think it's a very hazardous, potentially, time for the market. So you have to be defensive. 5 most interesting stories of the week. This is one everybody's probably heard. So the U.S. credit was downgraded. Fitch Ratings downgraded the U.S. Tuesday, and also delivered a dressing down to the U.S. political system and the country's fiscal policy. It downgraded just from AAA to AA, which is still very solid. I mean, I think the dollar will always be worth something because it's a ticket to live here. On the other side, there's going to be issues with inflation and the government trying to control rates and inflation. So it also said the U.S. has no medium-term fiscal framework and has, quote, made only limited progress in tackling Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare costs. That is an overstatement. We are so out of control on these things. They say the deficit is 31 trillion, but it's probably 200 trillion or 150 trillion because it's all unfunded liabilities that they're not even showing on the books. By the way, other countries are in the same situation. They promise free healthcare to aging populations. They may be even worse in a way because giving totally free. Well, in the U.S., at least some people pay for Part B, so you're chipping in at least a bit. But it's either way, these are staggering returns, which are going to affect the investment environment going forward. By the way, the Biden administration called this the Trump downgrade. I don't even know what to say about that. Trump was president 3 years ago. Are you going to blame it, Trump in 10 or 20 years for everything that happens? I don't know why. It has nothing to do with him. It does have to do with 2 things. One, politicians on both sides. I'll give you that. I mean, the Democrats probably get an F on fiscal policy, and the Republicans probably get a D- or a D, because both have spent too much and let this get out of control. Most interesting story number 2. This was pretty big in the news too. A lot of times we pick stories that aren't that well known, but the Ukraine delivered a blow to the heart of Moscow when its drones striked 2 office buildings, and it also shut down an airport. So Vladimir Zelensky said, quote, gradually the war is returning to the territory of Russia, to its symbolic symbols and military bases, and this is an inevitable, natural, and absolutely a fair process. So this cannot be popular in Russia among the public. Number 3 story. This is the first time in a year and a half I've repeated a story, but this is so important for health. So a study came out that intermittent fasting is not necessarily healthy. It's a big fad, among Kourtney Kardashian and Gwyneth Paltrow. But it turns out it can be very unhealthy. They did a study of over 100,000 adults, and those who ate breakfast after 9 a.m. had a 59% higher rate of type 2 diabetes. And also people who ate a late dinner also had about 5 times the risk of type 2. So be careful about intermittent fasting. And interestingly, calorie counting turned out to be just as effective. Try to stay away from politics, but you can't avoid it. And it's so interesting. So Hunter Biden's business partner, Devin Archer, testified in front of Congress today. He talked about how the big guy and Hunter Biden always said, we need to talk to my big guy. And apparently Joe Biden got on the phone over 20 times with business associates of Hunter Biden. And ready for this? He talked with all of them about the weather. The weather. 20 times. What is that? In other words, he didn't want to talk about what he really meant. You don't talk to 20 people as vice president about the weather. Wow. Okay. Next, finally, Taylor Swift's story. Interesting, in Seattle. The crowd generated a 2.3 magnitude earthquake, which is a record for any stadium or anywhere. The screaming, the jumping, dancing, singing. The tour itself is going to earn over $1 billion, but a 2.3 earthquake generated by people. Pretty good. So let's take a quick break. If we could run shorter ads, Kim, it's up to you, but we're running a little tight today. Talk to you soon. Be right back with the pick of the week and other. actually, we're better on time. Sorry about that, Kim. I was looking at the wrong clock because we had started the show 4 minutes late, so we're good. What to do, as always, you have to own energy. I think that's the place to be, especially the pipelines. They're defensive. And I think there's a potential for energy to be a black swan here, where in the next summer, at some point, energy may just explode with shortages. And that's going to affect almost the entire rest of the market, or the rest of the market. Dividend and stock of the week. First of all, as always, disclosures, no guarantees. It's just an opinion. Nobody can guarantee anything. You can barely, except maybe a CD, but that's subject to inflation. This is for entertainment only. You need to consult your financial advisor. Everybody has a different situation. A couple of notes. One, I had said in the last week or two, look at BSM. It might drop on a poor earnings result, which I expected. And it was a pretty weak result. But the stock went up before the result, and I sold it. I'm out of BSM. And also because I found another stock, KRP, which I like better, another royalty trust. And I'm not going to cover that this week. I'll save that for when we get back, because I promised a non-energy pick, which I do have a number of. But so it took a really nice profit, maybe 20% in a month on BSM. And so KRP is interesting. And I will say this. The reason I'm even mentioning it is because there was an offering today. I bought it at almost 16. And then today they came out with a 6 million offering. It dropped to 14 this morning, 14.25. I bought a little more at 14.25. I have 2.5% in there now. But now, last I looked, it was 14.58 already. But this stock it's a royalty trust. I won't go into it again. So what I will cover this week is something called RSPS. It's the Vesco S&P 500 equal weight consumer staples. So consumer staples is an extremely defensive industry generally. I'm not thrilled with this one, but I like it. First of all, I wouldn't own it outside an IRA or 401k because it generates ordinary income. The dividend, I'm saying what I don't like about it too first. It's 2.2%, and I'm a dividend hog. I love income to reinvest, and so it's only 2.2, and if it's in an IRA, okay. If you're long term, you're going to get growth, and that dividend has a nice growth history. So, but outside, if you're only getting 1.5%, even if it doubles taxable, it's not going to be really after tax. It won't be very good. So, but I would look at it in a 401k as part. So right now, I'd only suggest maybe half or 1% allocation. But again, everybody's different. Depends where you are. What I like about it is it's equal weight, first of all, because nobody can really predict the future, especially in this information age. But these are 40 solid companies. Companies everybody knows, basically. Costco, Walmart, food companies. There you can look it up, basically. Again, it's RSPS. But these are solid companies. So if some don't do well, others probably will. You'll get growth in the long run. The management fee is low. So I like it, especially again in an IRA or a 401k. Everybody's different. If you're really super defensive and you want stocks and you don't, I still like energy, but also this maybe you want a bigger allocation. Everybody's different again. Okay, let's get to the panel discussion of the week. An interesting topic. So UFOs. I know Kim's going, wow. So question was, could UFOs be real? If there is evidence of UFOs and the government has it, should it be released? Quick background, 3 items basically. One, a lot of people know this. Congress has been holding hearings on UFOs and has been very critical of executive agencies for withholding information. Both sides, by the way, Republicans and Democrats have been saying, if you have the information, why aren't you telling at least Congress, if not the public? At least tell Congress. Don't withhold it from us. That's suspicious itself. So a former military, they had 3 witnesses at least, a former military intelligence agency agent who had worked for 14 years in the military said that Congress is being kept in the dark about unidentified flying objects and that information is being withheld. And then they had also 2 fighter pilots on who said they had hand experience with UFOs. So this is an unusual topic in the world. So, Kim, the question is, 1, could UFOs exist? Do you believe it? And 2, if so, should the Congress should the executive branches be releasing the information to Congress and or the public? What do you
Well,
think?
I believe in disclosure of such information at all times. I think the public needs to be aware. And it's interesting we're having this conversation because one of my best friends for the last 40 years, her father was a pilot. And one of the things that he spoke about was a few times when they had seen things that were in the air and what they were doing that were totally unidentified. And, we're talking about when she was a kid. So, that was definitely over 40 years ago. And so I think there's got to be something. This universe is awful big just for us to be the only living, breathing, intelligent species. And I think if it does exist, I think full disclosure, full transparency is
To the public and to Congress, you think?
What?
To Congress and the public?
Yes, yeah. I think full disclosure and transparency is their responsibility. Absolutely.
Okay, so I'm going to give my take. It's interesting. One, if the executive branches, I agree with you 100% on this first point. If the executive agencies really have information, they should at least release. The clearest thing is they have to release it to Congress. I mean, that would be unlawful. It would be outrageous if they're withholding information. It's up to Congress to decide if they want to release it. Now, my second point is I think it's almost impossible that aliens are visiting this world. And I'll say why. Number one, the nearest star, Proxima Centauri, is 4.2 light years away. Light travels at 186,000 miles a second. So we're talking about 5.8 trillion miles. So anything's possible again, but 5.8 trillion miles, which is about 1,500 times the distance to Pluto, and we're struggling to get to Mars. But for an alien to travel this far via even something fast, if they could go the speed of light, which is very unlikely to me. I mean, some people feel nothing could travel faster than light. That was Einstein's theory, but let's say you could even travel it that way. Let's say you could go the speed of light. 186,000 miles a second would be very hard to get to, but it would still take you years and years to get there. But I guess if you could get there theoretically, it could work. But I don't think you're going to ever get to near those speeds, one. Two, I don't think there's anything, where we have like this concept of, warp drive, like on Star Trek, where you could go faster than light. Or they had like wormholes, the theory. You could pop in a wormhole and pop out the other side. It could exist. Anything could exist. I could pop out my door and wind up in California tomorrow, but I don't think it's likely to happen. These are just ideas. The universe isn't going to necessarily behave that way. Also, so, I mean, the thing is, if at any normal speed, that even 10 times what we could achieve today, 100 times what we could achieve today, it would take lifetimes, many lifetimes, to get to, our planet. So how many lifetimes are people going to spend trying to get to a planet if they even knew which direction to head in, no less? Because each star is 4.2 light years away. So let's say you were leaving a planet and you're heading in a direction. Well, which one do you head for? Because the next star might be 4 trillion, 5 trillion miles away, just looking. So it's not like you can go, we'll check this planet out. And then we'll go, okay, we just went 5 trillion miles. Let's go to the next star and see if there's any life on this solar system. But trillions of miles away from each other. I don't think it's ever going to happen. I think it's totally unrealistic. But if the government has it, it's clear they should release it, but there's a few other points. One, there's arguments plus and minuses to releasing it. Number one, if they released it, there could be worldwide panics, and also maybe people would stop working and saying, they're going to invade, I'm going to die, I'm just going to enjoy my life today, and that's it. So maybe they're concerned about, the effect on the public. On the other side, if the aliens could travel 5 trillion light years, why would they be hiding? So that's another thing. Why would they bother to hide, and why would we even see them? Both. I don't think so. I think the whole thing's a joke. The fun we're running. The other thing is, I would add, when I was an undergraduate in my dorm, we had some kids who did a fire circle in San Diego, and there were days of reporting on that. And they all believed, oh, an alien came. And they were like, oh, yeah, we pulled that one off. And plus, I've seen so many illusions where, the sun refracts strangely in light, or, a camera does something funny or whatever it is. So I don't believe in it. But it certainly would be interesting if it happened. Kim, any other comments? We have a little time left.
No, I mean, I think that anything's possible, and
Exactly.
Who knows? Why would they hide? That's a good point. Maybe, and maybe they didn't have to travel that far, and maybe time and space is different for them.
Maybe.
So, I mean, science is,
That's true.
unfolding every day, and it also contradicts everything we say today. So I think, who knows, just like the stocks, right? Who
Right.
knows? And
Well, I hope we have better knowledge of stocks than we do about aliens.
one more thing before
a
you
lot of
leave.
people don't, probably.
Before you leave, I mean, one of the turbulences that I have noticed recently is our interest rates keep going up like crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Do you see any change in the future?
Well, I've been saying I know the Fed's plan is to raise interest rates and then hold them. And if it works at all, it's going to be a painful process, because let's say they stop at 6%. First of all, I think there's at least one more coming. But maybe let's say they stop at 6. So they're trying to have gain with no pain. And you can't do that, because if there's no pain in the economy, the stock market goes up, people have money, and unemployment stays low. There has to be some pain to control inflation, especially when you get into this mindset and cycle. So they're in a big danger of locking it in. So I think the best case scenario is the Fed stops at like maybe 6% or 5%, maybe one more, maybe even have to go higher. Nobody really knows. They were so far off themselves. So, but there's a lot of danger in that. But the other danger is, I don't think they're going to lower it, almost certainly, for a long time, because their target is 2%. They're nowhere near it. And it's probably getting worse again. Energy is probably going to start pushing. Unemployment's going to stay low. It's going to take a lot to move an economy off a track we're on. And so I think interest rates are going higher. Maybe another quarter or half, the curve will be more inverted than ever, because people will still say in 30 years, I'll take that interest rate. So it'll be inverted, but the danger is there all over the place. And, there's no guarantees. Again, maybe I'm wrong. I'm not invested only for one scenario. The energy will do well, I believe, in any scenario. The other picks I'm buying businesses, in other words. That's the key point. I try to find a business which will do well in any environment, a grocery-oriented business, an energy-oriented business, some investment that will do well in any environment. But the macro picture to me isn't pretty. So that's my conclusion. Anyway, I have to mention we're closing for the summer just for a few weeks, and then we're going to have a new show on September 7th or 9th, depending on how you're watching. So hopefully you'll keep tuning us in and following us. We've been pretty accurate over the last year and a half in terms of predictions and investments. And as Kim always says, get healthy and get wealthy. Great expression. And we'll see you in a few weeks. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Take care.